You are listening to APYouthNet Radio.
Hello and welcome back to the APYouthNet radio show, where we look at some of the key issues relating to youth employment in Asia and the Pacific. I'm Sophy Fisher from the International Labour Organization. This is a very special programme because it's coming to you from Geneva, where the ILO's headquarters are. We're in the main plenary hall of the United Nations building in Geneva. And with me are Joanna Bernice Cognac of the Philippines and the Alliance of Progressive Labour, Emmanuel Zemmour from France and the French Students' Union, Drissa Soaré from Burkina Faso Workers' Organisation, Ghada Ismail from the Youth Leadership Development Foundation in Yemen, and last but not least, Samuel Díaz Fernández from Colombia and the World Students' Christian Federation. In addition, we have with us Matthieu Cognac, the ILO specialist for youth employment in Asia and the Pacific. Welcome to you all and thank you very much for taking part in the programme today. Okay, in this programme we'll be talking about the outcomes of the ILO's Youth Employment Forum that's been held here in Geneva. The aim of the forum was to allow young people from around the world to express their views on the current youth employment crisis that is affecting us globally. The conclusions of the forum are also being presented to the International Labour Conference. All our young guests here today took part in the forum, and so I'll be asking them for their views on the outcomes.
This event was really exceptional, and it came as a result of 46 additional events that took place around the world, whereby young people, representatives from workers and employers organizations and also governments got together and spoke about youth employment, spoke about the key issues and also the solutions. And so at the end of this event, what we saw is young people from Latin America, from Asia, from Europe, from really everywhere, coming together with some key important messages, and those were that the time was enough where they would not be invited at a table of policy discussions. It is not possible anymore to talk about launching policy discussions, developing youth employment action plans or strategies if the young people themselves are not engaged. And so we talked about the creation of mechanisms whereby the young people would be involved in a systematic way. We talked about the possibility of systematically hearing the young people's voice before the International Labour Conference. But what is really important is to send a message that we're not only listening to the young people, we're involving the young people in a systematic manner.
Great, thanks, Matthieu. Let me first turn to Joanna Bernice from Asia Pacific. Give us your impressions of the forum and how you think it went.
Well, the forum went nice because I guess it was organized 3 months before the time of the Youth Employment Forum that took place here in Geneva last May 23 to 25. But it's a great experience because you've seen different young people from different parts of the world. So it's an opportunity for the young people like me to gain knowledge from their experiences and from their lessons. And it is said to be a historic moment for the ILO to take youth employment issue as an international issue.
For me, the forum was emblematic of the current situation with youth worldwide because it reflected kind of our state of being at the time, the energy, the desire to see the face of the other, to see the face of so many people who are different than us, from different cultures, different contexts, and to embrace that, to struggle with it, because we don't want to be too idealist about it, it's different, but to be energized by it. At the same time, understanding that there's an urgency about it all, that there is, to put it even frankly, a desperation for many, because it's a life or death issue of employment in many places. So there was that, and then underlying it, there's also this desire to not just enter into bureaucracy merely for the sake of it, but to see action come through. And so all those elements together really reflected the current state of the generation, and I think that's good, because it starts with a place of knowing who we are.
I'd like to ask Ghada also, as well as for her impressions, to what extent you found that the issues raised by young people from other parts of the world were the same as those that you and your friends are finding in Yemen?
We exchange experience from different culture, and I think that I get a lot of opinion and ideas that can be implemented in Yemen, so we can exchange our experience together and make networks with other youth from all around the world. And I think the issues that raised in the forum, it's the same same that's also in my country, in Yemen. Some of the ideas that related to the enterprise and entrepreneurship, I think there is good practices that shown in the firm that I can implement it also in my country with the help of the organization that I'm coming from.
Okay. Now, Emmanuel, we hear a lot on the news about the youth unemployment problem in Northern Europe, in Spain and in France. To what extent did you see commonalities between your experience and those from young people in other parts of the world?
Eh bien, s'il y a quelque chose dont on s'est rendu compte,
if there's something that we've realised during this conference, it is that there is such a thing as global youth. It exists indeed. We are all different. We all live in countries that go through different developments and with different economic contexts. And yet we have all realised that we feel the same frustrations, the same anger, the same necessity to speak out, to go beyond technical issues, beyond the few words that can be exchanged on youth employment or on employment in general, and really to carry forward the voice of the youth. This feeling has come out strongly here at the International Labour Conference, and it is indeed rather striking that in every corner of the world we can feel that we are discriminated against in the same way, that we cannot find a place for ourselves in the same way, but that we have the same aspirations as well. It's amazing that across the globe we all have the same aspiration to find a place for ourselves within our society, and that is really something that touches me as a young Frenchman and as a young European. And we should carry that forward beyond the International Labour Conference.
Drissa, who comes from a very different country, Burkina Faso, whether he feels the same, whether he feels that at the forum there was this sense of unity among young people.
Ce forum a été vraiment une opportunité, comme l'a dit Emmanuel, que la jeunesse.
I would say that this forum has been a real opportunity, as mentioned by Emmanuel, for the youth of the world to meet up, because we have the same vision and the same aspirations. I would say that it was a crossroads of experience and of knowledge sharing. It has been a real opportunity for us young people coming from around the world to meet up and to bring together our own ideas. It is true that realities are not the same depending on which continent or country we come from, and yet when we synthesize it all, we observe that we are all moving towards a common vision. The initiative of the ILO to launch such a forum has provided us with a very good opportunity to really put forward our various concerns.
Ce genre de forum qui nous a permis réellement de mettre en avant nos différentes préoccupations.
Well, one of the points that Emmanuel raised was the importance of the fact that this forum gave an opportunity for young people's voices to be heard. I wonder to what extent you feel that your messages actually got through.
Oh, during the forum, of course, as young people, we are gathered. So basically, young people's voice are heard because young people are speaking. We're speaking in behalf of the young peoples on the part of the world. Because unfortunately, only one from each country can be represented. But it's a breakthrough. But then again, during the International Labour Conference event, the chosen 10 of representative of the young people of the world gathered together their collective ideas, so it will be put forward to the members of the International Labour Conference. So by the 15-minute opportunity is not that enough, but still those space is a privilege and honor enough for us that we have registered our collective voice and our collective solution that we hope for the betterment of the youth employment situation for the young people.
For the value of this to really come out, it needs to not be a one-off, but to be repeated. Would you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely, because the beauty of the forum and of us being here is that it was a historic initiative. It was a first foot, a small victory, and it's important to mark those small victories, to say that they're ours and that they belong to the collective for the good of the collective. But without continuity, the voice breaks and it disappears, because in our day and age, I mean, this is, again, part of the dynamic that occurs here is there are so many issues raised, so many policies that you kind of have to fight for memory itself. And so part of us being here is just continuing to demand that visibility and that kind of a structure to allow for visibility and not just to dream of it in the ephemeral realm or hypothetical. Part of that is represented in our objectives, you know, to have the Youth Advisory Council. So respecting and honoring the tripartite structure, we would have people there at the table. I mean, symbolically or not, they would be there at the table just mitigating and facilitating the dialogue, being able to say, yes, that's our issue, let me tell you about it, let me tell you about my experience. At the same time, we want to create a network that surrounds that, because it would be disingenuous of us to say that the people there at the table can represent all experiences. So that network would at the same time create not just a support, but a balance and accountability, that there's constant feedback from all kinds of contexts, so that we also remain humble and also don't just rise to a cream that's abstracted from that. And then the third would be just to maintain within the tradition of the ILO the Youth Forum, because we've all agreed that it was magnificent in that first step. So we can continue to refine it, to sharpen it, to critique it because we love it. Then we can assure that within the structure of the ILO and continue that progressive future thinking tradition.
I agree with Samuel that being participating in the forum and also making the forum be repeated again and again for the coming years, it will allows us to make our voice heard, and it allows us to show the other people that what youth needs. And I think that being here as a youth from our country, that helps us to see what's our issue in our countries, because it's somehow different from the other countries all around the world, and it could help us to raise the specific issue that we are facing in our countries in different aspects, either political issues or economic issues that related to youth. When I go back to Yemen, I'll try to tell all first of all to tell my colleagues in the organization what's going on the farm, and then I will try to make network also with youth from my country, with other people from all around the world that participated in the farm, so they can exchange their idea and so they can tell the people what they want to say.
Right, and now let's not forget that in addition to giving young people a voice at the heart of international policy making, one of the other purposes of this forum was to actually discuss concrete ways to create jobs and to get young people into decent work, which gives them a future. Emmanuel, do you think it also ticked that box?
Before getting into the details, I would just like to add a word on the window of opportunity that was opened by the ILO when it gave a voice to young people. I think what is happening now at the ILO is extremely important. It is of historical value, as was said, and I think that the ILO has had this courage to open a window of opportunity, which is exactly what Samuel was saying. Obviously, we are not naive. We do not think that everything will be solved in one go, that all of a sudden the youth will be effective actors within the political system. But there is an opportunity that has been created, and it is our role now to take advantage of it. Step by step, we can build something, and I really think that there will be no other choice whatever happens. When we look at what is happening around the world, it is the youth who systematically transform societies. Look at what has happened in North Africa. Look at what has happened in Mashrek. Look at what happened in all those countries where changes happened. Every time it is the youth who are the engine of social transformation. In any case, if this window of opportunity had not been opened, we would have opened it ourselves. So now, let us take this opportunity to move on even further. The further we go, the better it will be. Yes, we absolutely agree, and as we say, it had to happen at some point. As you have heard in the speech of the ILO Director General, he said that youth was the future. But we should also not forget that youth is also the present. One cannot lead a debate on a specific demographic without involving them in the debate. Hence, it has been necessary for the ILO to involve young people in the ongoing debate on youth employment. We say this is a very interesting opportunity and also a privilege for us to fully participate in the debate and to share our vision, because after all it concerns ourselves and we need to provide our input to the building and positive transformation of our societies so that future generations do not have to face the same difficulties as we did.
And from a practical perspective, I mean, as we said, one of the purposes of this was to discuss ways in which young people could actually be put into work. And I think there were common messages coming from across the world as to some of the barriers that are stopping this. For example, a problem with the right kind of skills training, a problem with labour market systems, difficulties faced by young people who want to become entrepreneurs because they have no credit record and banks will not lend to them. These kind of problems turned out to be comparatively common worldwide, which I think was interesting. But what I would like your opinion on is, to what extent do you think that policymakers have taken those messages on board, that they have to do something about the skills training, they have to do something about helping young people who want to be entrepreneurs? And Joanna, let me start with you, because I know that in the Philippines a lot of young people want to start their little businesses, and there's also a big issue with the skills training. Do you think those messages are actually getting across in a practical fashion that will produce practical changes?
Yes, and to add on, the situation in the Philippines is not just about young people urging to have a better life through entrepreneur, but many of the Filipinos, for example, are urging for a decent work, a regular work, because in the country it is more of precarious employment. So the session of the Youth Employment Committee right now is just a while ago is discussing about entrepreneurship and the ways to move forward, and they have clashes of ideas but the good thing about the clashes of ideas, and I guess that's the beauty of diversity, but then again we need to meet halfway, what's the best for us. And at the end of the day, like Samuel and Emmanuel is pushing for, the importance of Youth Advisory Council is to let the youth voices to be heard, because it is not about the employers, it is not about the government, it is not about the trade unions, but also the young people's choice, which are the possible solution is. And as far as it is going now, they have different perspectives. They have different agendas that they are pushing for. Employers want to promote purely entrepreneurship, but the trade unions is saying that it is not the possible solution. The government have, citing their examples on what they are doing, but not putting forward the concrete solution. But as a young people representing our country who undergone also the consultation, we believe that entrepreneurship can help solve the unemployment, but it is not the substitute for job creation for us as Filipinos, but for me as a young people who speak in behalf of the young people around the world. If you promote regular work, then you create a venue for those workers who can consume the products in the market. And if those people are regular, can consume more, there are bigger demands, then you can generate jobs and rights are being exercised. For me, that is more important. But of course, their discussion about entrepreneurship, about educations are far more than important. But in behalf of my co-young people in my country, this is their voice.
Samuel, would you agree that the governments, the workers and the employers all have to consider the commonalities as much as the differences, and at the moment they're focusing a little bit too much on their own specific approaches?
Yes, but I would qualify that. I think that the reason why they're here in the first place is because the whole point is that this is a place to find common ground, and to find common ground in terms of discourse, a language that we can speak in that signifies certain values that we uphold, decent work. It's not just about providing employment. You know, in Europe it might be unemployment, you know, at large. In Latin America there is employment, you know, but it's not quality. And so there might be that difference, but it's finding those values that then surface as policies or measures and standards. To me, on the practical level, the jury is still out. To me, it's a challenge for the ILO. Because, to be honest, I think it's important to be realistic. A lot of the youth of the world and a lot of our, you know, a lot of the South American continent, North American continent, are very suspicious of organizations like the ILO or the United Nations. They don't think that they actually have any kind of say. I think the idea is that these international organizations might carry the agenda of, you know, past powers or the powers that be that are at the councils, and that they can't do much. You know, if another country invades or if another country imposes certain sanction or policy, what are these organizations going to do? So our call, the reason why youth need to be there is to widen the possibilities, to open up the alternatives, because if all we do as youth is just pass the torch, we're not doing anything. We're not changing anything. All we're doing is just implementing the same old system. We're perpetuating it. We have to work within it, but opening it up to alternatives, to use that imagination that comes with youth, to make it relevant, to make it practical, and to continue to fight for that common discourse.
I think I agree with someone that the reason that all the employers, the government, and the trade union are here, or all the delegation from all over the world are here, is to find a common idea that they can help the youth to solve the problem of the employment, and I'm sure that they may face problem for getting this and to be in one idea, but they should think about the idea of that comes from the youth itself. They should consider the youth that they can be also part of decision maker, and that's it.
We are almost out of time, so I would just like to ask our guests on this side, and starting with Drissa, what do you think is the most important message for you in Burkina Faso to come out of the Youth Employment Forum?
Pour moi, je pense que le message le plus important, il y a eu plusieurs messages que nous avons fait passer au niveau de la commission.
There have been several messages that have been put forward at the Commission, but the most important one today is for youth to be involved in the elaboration, the definition and the implementation of all policies and all programmes that are geared towards youth employment. As you can see, without taking the youth into consideration, there's a problem. If we look around the world, all the countries which have listened favourably to the youth are now engaged in sustainable development, whereas countries which have not listened to the considerations of the youth are today falling into decline because they suffer from generational issues such as employment crises, educational crises, and I think that our most important message here is that the voice of the youth needs to be heard and considered for the sustainable development of our nations.
Emmanuel, I think it's the same question for you.
What I would say is that we are not alone. The world is with us, so we need to act. That is what I will say in France when I return. However, we do need to be careful. This is not about promoting youth because it is a nice thing to do. Personally, I would prefer not to have to defend the idea of a youth commission at the ILO. I would prefer that it was mainstreamed. I would much rather have the same situation, the same rights, the same capacity to be integrated into society as the rest of the population. But this is not the case. We gave the example of entrepreneurships earlier on, precisely one of the reasons why we are here, and it is indeed what we will all report when we return to our countries. That is, to avoid the solutions proposed to tackle the youth employment challenge, which are gimmicks. Youth entrepreneurship, for example, not that it is a gimmick, but if we say that the solution to youth employment is entrepreneurship, then what we need to follow is access to financing to help young people invest, such as loan funds. All this without making any reference to the fact that young people are the least protected in this world, that when young people take financial risks, they also risk their entire future. In most countries, it is not feasible to be a young entrepreneur because the majority of young people lack the necessary experience and capital. Let us not pull one-size-fits-all solutions out of a hat, such as an investment fund on youth entrepreneurship or similar solutions suggested in economic textbooks, but rather understand that youth employment is highly political and that, before anything, young people need protection and access to the mainstream. My wish is that we manage to put together a temporary youth commission at the ILO, so that when the crisis is over, when we have won, we can live in a society in which young people have the place they deserve, which is the same place as everyone else.
Having had until now really an Asia-Pacific perspective to the debate and hearing the messages that we are listening to around here from all these continents, all of these countries, it reiterates the fact that basically we know what the key challenges are when it comes to youth employment. It's always going to be about the necessity to generate jobs at the local level, at the provincial level. It's going to be about the skills mismatch which exists, the fact that we are training people on jobs that don't really exist. It's going to be about the lack of identification or participation for the young people. And so these challenges that have been identified in a common way need to be dealt with, and the solutions need to be coming commonly once again by this cohort. And we are talking about, the necessity to put forward an intergenerational dialogue, but what we're really seeing here is the strength of an of continents coming together, of a youth employment coalition, if I can use the words of the president of Indonesia when he came here in this very international labor conference last year, a global coalition for youth employment. I think we are in a way seeing the beginning of that.
Matthieu, thank you very much. And I'm afraid that's all we've got time for at the end of what has been a very important week in ILO history and an important week for the voices of young people seeking decent work and a decent future. I'd like to thank all our participants very much. Joanna, Bernice, Coronacion from the Philippines, Samuel Díaz Fernández from Colombia, Ghada Ismail from the Yemen, Drissa Soaré from Burkina Faso, and Emmanuel Zemmour from France, and of course Matthieu Cognac, the ILO's Asia-Pacific specialist for youth employment. You will be able to find copies of this broadcast and more information about the ILO's work on youth employment at our Asia-Pacific website, which is the ILO's website, www.ilo.org/Asia. Finally, I'd like to thank you all very much for listening to this broadcast, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.
This has been an AP YouthNet radio presentation.